Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Helm Developer Weekly Call. As always, we follow the CNCF community guidelines. And this is always a great community, so we've never had to worry. And I see a bunch of new faces. Maybe we could start with anybody that would like to introduce themselves. Like Lucas. I'm sorry, I wasn't here last week, so if anybody was here last week.
Yeah, I'm Lucas. I've been here. This is probably like my third or fourth Helm meeting I've been to, and I'm just trying to get more involved and become more active as a contributor capacity. So just trying to learn as much as I can and not slow you guys down as much as possible. So yeah,
We're excited you're here. Thanks, Lucas. Would anybody else like to introduce themselves?
Yeah, I can go next. So hi everyone, I'm Laksh, and I'm a computer science undergraduate student. And so I've been learning Helm and I was diving through the code base. So I thought let's join the meeting and see how it goes. So yeah, I'll be here and just see how everything is going and hopefully learn a few things and contribute to the project as well.
Awesome, thanks for joining and for the introduction. Would anybody else like to?
I can give a quick intro. I've been on the last few developer calls as well. Yeah, Ian Zink, I'm a developer advocate with Replicated. And yeah, we use Helm a lot. Our customers use Helm a lot, and like to hear what's happening in the community and how we can help Helm and how Helm can help us. So that's why I'm here.
Nice. That sounds like a good discussion topic too. All right, anybody else? I don't know if you've ever introduced yourself, Ben. See your stuff always. I don't want to, put anybody on the spot. Okay, so announcement.
It's fine. I can go if you want. I appreciate that you're not calling anyone, but you're like, hey Ben. So I'm Ben. I go by French Ben. I've been, I think, monitoring Helm for like quite some time, and I've pushed a couple of like different PRs, and so I've been recently dialing in a little bit more just to kind of follow through on the PRs and just be a little bit more aware of like the release cycles and how these different PRs maybe make it to a release and not make it into a release.
I think what really helps is having people join the call and bringing those PRs forward to get some more attention. So definitely thanks, Ben. Because I know from the last couple of calls you've been adding some, so thank you. All right, we don't have any announcements that I see, except of course KubeCon's in a couple of months and it's going to come fast. Karen, did you have any announcements you wanted to talk about?
Not necessarily. I mean, we submitted the talk for the Helm maintainer track, so that should be good to go. We did that on Friday, and then I'm expecting an email to come in soon about whether or not we want to do another like Helm booth in the project pavilion again. So TBD on the details for that, but that should be upcoming soon.
And
that's it.
Thank you. I almost started a discussion topic, but I can't add my own in just because I'm moderating. I can put it in later. But so Joe, yours is first. Would you like to talk about the post-install, post-upgrade hooks?
Yeah, so there's inconsistent behavior. If you use the wait flag, the post-install or post-upgrade hook will actually run after the pods are all ready, which probably is what you typically will want, because if you're doing a post-install or post-upgrade, you're probably trying to do some action to the application you just installed. If you don't use the wait flag, it doesn't wait for them to be ready. So as soon as the apply is done, it starts running the post hooks. It turns out that the code is actually written specifically that way. So I think it's an oversight. I'd like to change it so that if you have a post hook, it always does the wait. so before the hook supply. But that would kind of be, well, it's a behavior change, but only in one way, because if it's inconsistent behavior. So I'm not sure if that's considered breaking or not.
So it could be breaking, right? So I could imagine, like, I don't know, your post hook generates like, I don't know, a certificate you want to use in your pod, and now the pod doesn't come up because it waits, it relies on this behavior, right? So could you see that? You should have used a pre-install hook probably instead, right? So kind of blame it on you then, but
I think I considered it a bug just because it's inconsistent. Right, when the hook runs is totally dependent on whether or not you use the wait flag.
But it kind of makes sense that if you don't specify the wait flag, you don't wait. I mean, it's when you think of it that way. But I agree, it would be kind of it's kind of confusing that. I mean, I've never used Helm without the wait flag because generally you want that sequential ability to synchronize. So I don't know why someone would want to not use the wait flag. So does it
also
what's the context for noticing this? Was there
We had a
confusion to someone or?
Yeah, we had a customer that installed our Helm chart and it failed because the post hooks ran the service being ready. I mean, yeah, it was easy enough to fix. Well, it was a few minutes of, well, why isn't this working right? And then finally, we had them run out the wait flag, and then it worked. But that's a burden on our support people where it shouldn't be.
Based on my prior comment, I would say the wait flag should be the default when you do Helm install or upgrade, because I again, I don't know why you'd not want to wait for your stuff to be ready before you continue, but
I mean, I can certainly see that argument too. Chart test always does a wait flag, so all your tests are always done with wait.
yeah. So maybe you
But
say, okay, I just apply it to the cluster, right? And then we have monitoring in place that will make sure that everything is healthy, right? So maybe you say, okay, that's why I don't have it, but probably there's no reason to explicitly not want it. I don't know.
I mean, I don't think there's a guarantee as to when the wait flag, sorry, when the post and install hooks will run. So do you have a question about whether we can change the behavior? I don't really see it as a behavior change because we didn't make any guarantee that would run at any point in time anyway.
Sorry, yeah, that's what I was asking is can we just change the behavior so that if there's a post hook, it does wait for the main body to be ready.
I guess if it was a default change in behavior, the only risk would be if other people are depending on the old behavior, right?
Which there's no way to know.
Yeah, I don't know if.
And I
anyone
guess
would be or not.
there's then an easy way around this, right? You can just use a pre-install hook instead. Like,
I mean, if
of
someone
any
really
case-
wanted that, oh, sorry, you finish?
Yeah.
I was gonna say, if anybody really wanted that scenario described where they wanted something around post install but pre-wait, there could be another hook type for that particular scenario, but that seems exotic to me.
I think this would be a good discussion to have in the issue itself too, for the maintainers that aren't able to join the weekly calls as often anymore, to get their insight. And what do you think? I mean, George, Philip, I think your comments would be good in the issue.
Sure, I can write my thoughts down.
I'd love to see Farina's comments, but he seems to have been a bit busy lately.
But I have to admit, I'm not a fan of Helm's very strict backwards compatibility guarantees. That's kind of sometimes a bit yeah, there are changes that would be very helpful. We can't do them because of some people abusing Helm, basically. Yeah.
I don't know, from my experience, like dealing with the support issues, if we start changing things on people, it's just going to cause so much confusion across the street. So it's it does go both ways, to throw the other
Yeah.
side in there. But I was going to say as well, Joe, maybe for this particular issue, one thing that would be reasonable would be to print a warning if you have a post install hook and not the white flag. That would certainly be like, I think, an easy one.
Yeah.
But
I think it'd be really interesting to know.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
What are people doing? Like, how is anyone really even using the post install hooks? As you're mentioning, right? Like if you don't use -- wait, in many ways, it's not very useful. So how are people actually using them today? You know, are they, is everyone who's using post install hooks also specifying when you use this chart, please use -- wait? Don't know. It could be an interesting, thing.
But again, if anybody who's testing their charts is testing it with weight, because their CT doesn't do it without weight. So if they did do it, if they did write a broken chart, they would never know it because unless a user brings it up. Anyway, yeah, please feel free to discuss in the issue. I'm gonna open my own PR because somebody thought it was a good idea to just throw a blob of Go as plain text into a comment, calling that as submission. So it's not going to fly.
All right. Do you want to talk about this one anymore? Or? You good, Joe?
Good.
Okay. All right, George, yours is next. Go template change.
I noticed this a few weeks ago, and I just wanted to bring it up for people's awareness. I think mostly Go template changed to short circuit conditional operators, meaning previously, if you had a conditional like this and this and this, then it would always evaluate all those parts of the conditional. I mean, I think we know what short circuiting means, but just in case someone's chart breaks, someone has a problem, this could be the cause. And it's, if I remember correctly, it's in Go 118, which is what Helm 310 onwards is built with. So there's still probably a bunch of people out there who haven't been exposed to this change. But yeah, just for awareness.
Yeah. So we discussed this, I guess, some half a year ago or something, right? I posted also the issue already in the notes. I can also send it in the chat if you like.
Okay, if people already knew this, then perfect.
So one thing that it depends on the Go version you use to compile Helm, right? It's not something where you can say, okay, if you're using Helm 3.10, you get one behavior, and if you use 3.9, you get the old behavior. We had this scene that if you're using Brew to install Helm, it would already for 3.9 use the newer version of Go. So this, yeah, and if you use Helm SDK, right, then yeah, it really depends on the Go version you use. I guess now that yesterday Go 1.20 has been released, Go 1.17, the last version that had the old behavior, is now out of maintenance. So hopefully there's no one anymore using the old Go version. Otherwise, it's on them.
Yeah, the only thing I can add is people will probably have old binaries in their CI systems, whatever, but yeah, it's changing rapidly for people. I agree. You can point on SDK and other ways of obtaining Helm.
I mean, I've still got users using Helm 1.6.
It sounds like that could be a good or blog post if George, you think more people should be aware.
It's just,
What do you-
yeah, not a bad idea. I can, I can't say I've actually written a blog post before, but I can figure it out, I'm sure. It's a good idea.
Awesome.
Yeah, if you
Uh,
need help figuring out the blog, feel free to ping me. Well, thanks.
Sure, thanks.
I think that was the last discussion topic. So if anybody else has anything else, put it in the document. But again, for this group, are there questions on more getting involved? I know issue triage, Joe and George have been great. Philip, you've been doing a lot too. Or, things like the blog post, Karen mentioned reaching out to her if you have any questions. I mean, that's always a way to contribute. What are your all's thoughts? Or any questions or?
Is for someone looking to make like their first contribution, what would be like a recommended way to do that? Would you recommend going to like the good first issues and basically if it's something you can handle and volunteering for it basically?
Yes, I know when I'm triaging issues, I try to find ones where I think I know what the solution is, and I'll mark it as a good first issue if it's not too complex. So there should be several in there.
My first contributions I did by just triaging issues, and then I just myself found one where I thought this is I can handle that, right? So it's not touching like 50 different locations of the code, but just very local change, and I kind of feel like I know enough to tackle that. So yeah, if you do some issue triaging, helping other people, maybe you just find your good first issue yourself even.
Cool. What is issue triage? What does that process look like for y'all? Like I'm probably overthinking it, but you just going through the issues that were submitted in the last week from the last meeting, and then labeling it as needed and assigning as needed, or
What I do, I go through. I have an hour at the end of each day that I go through and look at issues. I look for the unlabeled first, and yes, I'll decide whether it's a support issue or a bug. Label it appropriately or feature occasionally. Discussion, and if it's a support issue, I will try to find an answer, at least some sort of answer, or if there's no way to answer it, ask questions so that I can get enough information to form an answer. And I try to go through from the oldest to newest all the support questions. I look at anything that's marked stale. I try to determine whether or not it actually should be. If it's marked stale and it actually is stale, I go ahead and close it. I think people like having a human do that instead of a bot. What else?
Another also like easy one is if you go through just the regular docs and you just try to follow the steps, and if one of the steps doesn't work or doesn't give you the output that you expected, you can basically modify the docs and say, this wasn't well explained, this needs further introduction, this command actually doesn't work because in, I don't know, such and such version, it behaves differently. Docs are often overlooked, unfortunately, but it's also a great way for first sort of like contribution to a project.
awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, and if you ever want to just like hang out on Zoom while I go through triaging, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, I would love to sit in on a session, pester somebody while they try to get something done.
We can collaborate on the Kubernetes Slack.
Cool.
Wondering, Joe,
Ju-
if
ju-
you
ju-
want- oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say the only thing I can add to what Joe said is from my experience, and sometimes it's like trying to dig into the code, or if someone is really having problems, like maybe even like trying to add additional debugging statements or something in there to to try and replicate what's going on. It can get a little deep sometimes, so it can be pretty interesting to like. There's a lot of behaviors out there for Helm, and trying to understand and learn about all the different ways people use it is pretty interesting.
I was wondering, Joe, if or whoever's doing issue triage, will first call out for volunteers next week. Triage. Let's see, PR review. Moderator. Karen's already got notes. But Joe, when you do triage or somebody else, can you maybe put it into the Helm dev Slack and say, hey, I'm doing triage if anybody wants to join a Zoom call with me?
Sure.
You know, get a wider audience maybe.
I do it daily at 4 o'clock.
I'll put it in my calendar.
What time zone?
Pacific time. I'm in Seattle.
Yeah, okay, that's way too late for me.
I tend to be a little ad hoc in between meetings and getting work done. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be very reliable for Zoom. I can try, but
I actually blocked it off on my work calendar. So
nice.
I do it at 2 a.m. when I can't sleep.
Good commitment.
Okay. So volunteers for next week.
as obviously, since I just said so, I'll continue to do triage.
I can help with triage, but I'll leave some of the issues maybe so that you guys get a collection to go through on a call maybe.
That's another thing that needs done. There's a bunch of PRs that don't have any reviews, and if anybody wants to go through the PR and like test it and try it out on the, build it themselves, test to see that it does what it's supposed to, what they say it does, and see if you can break it. Do that, and then add your gray check mark, and then at least then the core maintainers will see that somebody tried it. Save them a little time.
Tomorrow.
Sounds good. I can definitely do some PR review.
And Lucas, what really helps too is if you're going through and doing issue triage or PR review and then bringing them back to the weekly calls and say, hey, I looked at this. What do you all think? So those are good discussion topics to get those moving.
Okay. Is there, so if I were to pull down a PR and kind of start testing it and I have some comments to make, is just should I just leave those on PR or an issue because I definitely don't want to give the wrong impression that I have some sort of final say so on something, but
I always leave in the PR, and when I do give my gray check mark, I point out that I'm not a core. It'll still need a core maintainer to review it.
okay, cool.
Yeah, that's what I tend to do. That I just write a little disclaimer, right? This it's just my 2 cents, and maybe the maintainers disagree and even prefer the current solution. And my comment is then useless.
Cool.
It still helps to see how people use it or how they think about it. But
I guess especially people new to contributing, they don't make this distinction, right? And don't see, kind of look for if you're a maintainer or contributor or just some random guy.
Yeah.
Especially when you start commenting on every issue, everybody thinks that you're suddenly the person to talk to.
Yeah.
There is I'll bring up one more. There is I got 2 minutes. There's a cool PR that's open. It is adding the ability to add dry run equals server so that it'll actually connect to the server when you do your dry runs or your templates. So that seems to be done in a very backward compatible way, and it seems to have a lot of value. So check it out.
Nice.
I noticed backwards compatibility is like a really major theme with the Helm project, understandably. What are some like nuances on how y'all are testing for that? I'm sure there's a lot to go into there, but yeah, what are like big ideas there that we need to know, I guess?
One simple thing that people do a lot, and this is the easy one to catch. I go through the PR and I look for any functions that start with a capital letter that they've changed the definition of. They've added fields or whatever. That's a breaking change to the API.
Yeah. The other thing which is surprising to most people is a lot of people use Helm as not just a command line tool, but as an API. So there's 2 levels of, you can't just go and change internal packages because you'll break API consumers. And frustratingly, maybe to Philip's earlier point, Helm wasn't really architected for this case, kind of like came in. So it's perhaps a bit of a burden, but it is what it is.
Awesome.
And maybe one thing that also compatibility works both ways. So new features aren't added that would fail silently on older versions. We had this before, like adding new fields to the chart YAML that would cause malfunction if your Helm version doesn't support it. That's also not added. Something that was surprising to me. But it makes sense.
Yeah.
So we are at time, and this is such a great discussion topic, Lucas. Maybe next week we could add it also to the agenda, maybe continue. But anyway, thank you everybody for joining, and we are at time, sadly. And see you all next week.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you. Bye.